I read 14 dark and paranormal romance books in 14 days, and today I want to talk to you about Ruthless Creatures by J.T. Geissinger. This is a mafia romance that's heavy on the romance and light on the mob. As with all reviews of this nature, I will make sure that I put all of the content warnings on the screen, so if any of these topics are going to bother you or make you uncomfortable, be sure to skip this video. And while we're on the topic of content warnings, YouTube tends to kick videos around like this a lot, the less family-friendly content, so if you would do me a favor and like the video and subscribe to the channel, not only does it help me out, it does help train YouTube's algorithm to give you more dark romance videos, so if you've already done that, thanks so much. So I want to go over the plot really quick, and then I want to talk about some of the things I liked, and maybe some of the things I would have liked to have seen done a little bit differently. If you are super sensitive to spoilers, you can always skip this section by using the timestamps down below. I make sure that any spoiler sections are really clearly marked when I'm doing book reviews like this. I wouldn't consider the spoilers in this one to be excessive, but if you're really sensitive to it, you can always skip this section. So Ruthless Creatures is about a gal named Natalie, whose husband disappeared the night before their wedding 5 years ago. And since then, he's never been found, and she has just kind of been surviving since then. She's just kind of going along with the flow of life. She's not really getting invested in anything. She tries to date, and she can't find an emotional connection, not that she's particularly trying. And she doesn't date often, and when she does, it doesn't ever pan out, because she just can't find it in her to get invested or excited. She used to paint, she doesn't paint anymore. She used to dance, she doesn't dance anymore. She had all these interests and friends, and she's just sort of like let them all fall away over the course of the past 5 years. That is until a big burly tattoo man moves into the house next door. Cage, like most dark romance heroes, is tall and dark-haired and blue-eyed. Like I said, he's covered in tattoos, he's really built. He's pretty typical for the genre. The thing that makes him stand out is he's also really direct. He's very, very blunt, to the point of being a bit rude, and he is absolutely obsessed with Nat from the very beginning. So he starts kind of trying to hit on her or make the move on her, and she resists him. Like, all of her alarm bells are going off like, hey, this guy comes off as really dangerous. And finally she just asks him, she's like, are you dangerous? And he goes, oh yeah, I am. He's really upfront with her. He tells her that he's not a good man. He is a violent man. He lives a harsh, brutal, violent life. And warns her away from him, basically. He's like, oh, I'm really into you, but you should run. That works about as well as you would expect. It's like throwing gasoline on a fire. The pair of them fall into a desperate love affair, and Nat learns right away, before any commitments are made, that Cage is a member of the Russian mob. And not only is he a gangster, he is second in command. While the main guy's in prison, he's sort of running the show. So he's a big bad dude, and he's very clear with her that that's what he is. But he does his best to keep her separate. Now, from her perspective, that seems really sweet. Like, he's trying to look after her, he's trying to protect her, he's trying to keep her away from this violent life he leads. We, as the readers, learn very quickly that the reason Cage is keeping her so separate and basically keeping her a secret is that he was sent there to kill her. Basically, her ex-fiance was somehow involved in what they're doing and pissed off the lead guy who's in prison. So he sent Cage to find out wherever he's hid some kind of money. Nobody knows where what it is or where. We don't find that out till the end. And he couldn't do it. She was so sad and beautiful and sad, and it just really spoke to him, and he just couldn't bring himself to kill her, especially after he realized she didn't even know that her fiance was involved in any of this. The book's main focus is the love story between these two characters, and there is plenty of sex if that's your thing. A lot of it's very BDSM-y, not in a bad way. It's, you know, clearly portrayed, everything's sort of talked about up front. I liked the way that those aspects were portrayed, and I don't usually in books. I don't have a problem with BDSM, I just think that they get things wrong. This book actually did a pretty decent job. So if you're into smut, specifically BDSM smut, that might be something that you like, but the thing that got me was the actual romance aspects. The two of them sitting there talking to each other and flirting and joking and laughing and getting to know each other. It was all very sweet. And Cage is this big, ruthless man. I mean, he's a big, buff, dangerous man. And it's not just that the author has told us that he's dangerous. Like, we see him do horrible things in his position within the mob. And you just kind of get over it and get around it because he's so sweet and so gentle with her. He does everything in his power to look after her. He says basically it's his duty and honor to take care of her because he loves her. And I know that this is ridiculous. Of course, obviously, if you're not used to reading dark romance, they're specifically there to explore fantasies that you would never pursue in real life. Like, you would never want to date a mobster. You'd never want to date a guy that's in a dangerous motorcycle club or an assassin or anything like that. But it's fun to fantasize about it, right? So this is definitely probably one of the better portrayals of a romance that is believable and easy to buy into. And I think that they did a really good job with that. Honestly, my only critique with this book is the way that David, the ex-fiance, was written. We sort of get to know him through Nat's eyes over the course of the book. And by the time you get to the end, you can't really figure out, like, why she was with him in the first place. Like, he's very uptight. He's very restrictive. He was just... I didn't understand how she wound up engaged to him. I didn't understand what she saw in him. So we get this sort of grieving widow feeling from her, and she sort of slowly heals from that as she's interacting with Cage. Or she's starting to heal from that as she meets him, and sort of starting to process that, and he kind of helps her through the last bit of it. But you don't really understand why she was with David in the first place. And I think that that's probably the only critique that I have, is that David, for Nat's character and for how feisty and fiery and full of life she is when she's not grieving, David doesn't make a lot of sense. So that's probably my only critique. Overall, I really liked this book. It was dark, but not too dark. Cage was terrifying when he needed to be, and super soft when he didn't. Nat was interesting. Her arc, as she was sort of pulling herself out of the grieving process and getting over what happened to her, that was great. And yeah, I don't have a lot to say in the negative. I really enjoyed it. I loved their love story. So if that's the kind of thing that you're into, you might enjoy it too. Anyway, that's all I've got for this one. Like and subscribe if you haven't. You can support me on Patreon if you want to do that. Join us in the Discord if you want to talk about books or writing or anything else. There's all sorts of links down there in the description. Thanks so much for hanging out with me. Have an excellent day, and I'll see you in the next one.